of what you're saying, and then because we got to get to your story. But all right, I talked to one person who was part of the projects at Montauk, and one of the things they recounted to me as they witnessed seeing was a transference of consciousness. They were taking people out of their original bodies and putting them in other bodies that were essentially hybrid clone bodies. They were taking some DNA and mixing it with other stuff. And it was, enhanced super soldier type, whatever. But then they were taking the original bodies and burning them. So there was no, and this was told to me on another occasion. I was working with a client, and I met someone who was in their body, and the individual was much older than the client that I was working with, and so I started talking to. They came to the surface, kind of like an alternate personality. Was how old are you? And it's like 90-something years old. Well, my client's not that old. I said, "What's your name?" And of course, it was a person. They had a different name, and they said this to me. They said, I'm part of the secret space program. My body was aging out, but they need me to do my job. So they pulled me out of my body. They gave me a post in this person's body, and I no longer have mine. And they call me out of this person's body. I do missions off planet, and then they put me back here until they need me again, which is often. And the memories that are mine are the memories that have started leaking through to her consciousness that she can't place. And then this person began to tell me all kinds of secrets. And so, okay, I found that, ran it years ago, Jerusah.
Wow.
And I'm, all along the way, I see this world, but in snippets and windows. Please continue.
Yeah, I know that it can do that. And also the AI can trick you. And I've seen this with other kids into thinking that happened to keep you going too. So once again, discernment is everything in these types of projects. And that also stems into another thing, which we'll get into later too, called Emerald City Reanimated Soldier Programming. But yeah, that is a fact. And it's very sad that that's happened to many, but we were trained in what's called ghost protocol and how to pop out of our bodies, how to contain astral matter in glass tubes or step into a cylinder. A lot of this tech even evolved into portable tech and stuff like that. So that's entirely possible. There's even chairs you can sit in that stretch your body in different ways and can transfer a whole soul matrix or consciousness. And Scientology is involved with that, of course, and Mormons are very high up with that too.
Okay, so you were born into a Mormon household on the surface, but you believe you are a Q552 base baby who basically that's a base in Canada. Your mom was a chimera, and she was used to be, I guess, your birth mom. And she was also programmed, and your grandfather was a handler for both you and your mom. So tell me a little bit about what you know of your childhood and how they moved you into the projects.
My grandfather also handled my father too, which was very strange. And he was giving him doses of adrenochrome. But later on, I realized that I was also called a Gen 5 super soldiers. At age 3, I was sent to Montauk, rank Omnicord from the super soldier program, and then into the secret space program from there, which was called Solaris X1. And that was post Solar Warden. And that carries a subclassification of time agent, which is something I'll get into later too, because that also needs to be disclosed, that there's an actual thing of kind of like a time bureau. I know that some movies kind of make it animated and in a really ridiculous way, all the time travel stuff, but there is a little bit of truth in some of those files. So both my parents were program multiples. Majority events with their altars happened in the Ozarks, which I wrote a whole book about the Ozarks and all the stuff that happened in Oz, because it was original Oz programming. My father was also adrenochrome dosing, like I said. And what he had was something in his basement that a lot of people aren't aware of too. And it was called an ancient evil lantern. And one night this guy brought this lantern down to him. And what these lanterns contain, they were like very special prized possessions of the occult. And what they contain something called veil fire. And the veil fire has the ability to, when it's opened, create a corridor between dimensions or open realms. And it's kind of like compressed pain, and it's used as that strange fire when the sacrifices happen. And then they put it in a lantern. So he had a lot of stuff, a lot of military stuff going on with him, and stuff that he did in Rock Lake, Wisconsin, which has a lot of 10 black pyramids on the bottom, which are Nephilim graveyards. Me and Wendy went into that. I can get into that another time. But my sister was a hybrid. She looked very Asian. My 3 brothers were all Montauk boys with celebrity ties and handlers from the cloning centers too. And they all sold out, I would say, at a pretty young age because they were never the same. And my grandfather was an Egyptian shape-shifting child serial killer for the Masons in my locality. And his wife, my grandma, was an Illuminati breeder who had over 16 pregnancies, never worked, never drove, and just basically bred, and was very crazy and lost in her mind. And there's missing babies too. She's always talking about these babies. So I don't know if some of those babies got sacrificed or what happened to them. Like one baby, she said, was born and died the same day, and other stories like that. So from their gene pool also came Middle Eastern ties. And then I also told you about the genealogy findings. So I go into the Mormon database, use the barcode number. Everybody has a barcode, right? So I have access to 5 million records right there. I spend all night trying to research their genealogy and see if it matched up. What I found was that this Mormon genealogy goes all the way back to Adam. And I only could access it for a day or two, and then they blocked me from it. And it's like they erased it because I logged in again and it was just gone. I printed out some of it too, though. So they had Adam. They're absolutely obsessed with it. And Paul in the Bible warned about this, to not be obsessed with endless genealogies like the Masons are and whatnot. So they actually had Adam tied to a woman named Azura, Azura, and a woman named Pleiade 1. Now, this Azura or the Pleiade 1, I'm thinking might have been Lilith as like an original name, maybe a root name. And then they had all the bloodlines from Charlemagne, the God Kings, people that go past the Sherwood family. There was an actual King Gandalf. There's Bluebeard. There was Sigurd Snake Eyes. There was actually, in the Mormon genealogy, they have Thor Autra-Or and Odin Woden. All of those people are actually in there listed as actual people. I don't know if these entities that bred with the humans gave them like the giant mutations, demigod epigenetics, or what happened, but they have them all listed as in the pedigrees. So then,
okay. So, all right, I have to say something, Jerusah. All right. So obviously, I'm not just like an interviewer that's going to sit here and go, while you talk, because everything that you say triggers me because of other data points I know. Here's the interesting thing. In Christian conversation, a lot of researchers have tried to make the Genesis 6 event, and of course they lead into a book called 1 Enoch, where
what was it called?
1 Enoch, which is the book of Enoch.
I don't think I read that one.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll tell you. So there in that book, it talks about how the Watchers descended on the Mount Hermon, and they basically, as Azazel is their leader, and some Jazza, you have the two of them, and they're like basically bind an oath of mutual imprecations and begin to go after these women. They teach them all of these arts like astrology and makeup, and they teach people how to make war, and then they start having children. So you have these essentially fallen angels that are picking human wives, and then they are giving birth to giants. And so this book of 1 Enoch really kind of expands on Genesis 6, where it says the sons of God came into the daughters of men. That's the term B'nai Elohim. And a lot of people have centered on that and said, this is a real center of the conspiracy. This is when the Nephilim, and this is when genetic hybridization begins on the earth. And they want to make the conversation very simple. You have these fallen angels come, there's this incursion, and then we have to figure out how we get to today. And what I'm realizing over time, Jerusah, from so many different sources, is that it's an incomplete frame. You can't map every incursion and every interception of human bloodlines and timelines to that single event. There's a much bigger picture at play. And you brought up this word Azara. I've never heard of that before. But as soon as you said that, my mind goes to the Azarites, which is this off-planet group. And the Azarites seem to be very connected into the Illuminati agenda as an off-planet group. And so when you said Azara, I'm like, what? But please, I just wanted to point that. That
is very interesting.
What I want the listening audience, friends, to do is to say, okay, we are walking into a season where God is going to pull back the veil more. And if you thought that by believing that the biblical Nephilim is a real thing and the sons of God did come into the daughters of men, and hybrids have led to some of the sciences and what they're doing and their efforts to bring about a new world order in our generation, it's time to expand beyond that, because there's an even larger narrative, and that's a gate into it. And so with that said, please continue. Mormon genealogies.
That makes me wonder if they were inserting these off-world entities that they still worship, because many sites have been taken down, and we've actually taken down in the benevolent secret space program ritual sites that the Mormons were worshiping a fallen angel at. But what I found also is that there was the middle of all their genealogy pulled into this one area past the Ostrogoths, the Visigoths, and all that. There was a ring bearer family too, into this Grail king that they called Thuriel Emmanuel, Thuriel. So I know that in Jesus Christ's time, when he was on earth, there were other false messiahs, and maybe this was an Emmanuel that was one of those false messiahs. So just thought I'd throw it out there.
Wow.
But continuing. I grew up.
So you went to Montauk.
At age 3 is when my first, pinpointed memory is to being taken there. I was raised at a place called Star Avenue, ironically, and it was a weird neighborhood with all the planet names around the neighborhood, like Uranus and Neptune and Mars and all that. So there was an airport just a fourth mile down the road, and my grandfather was flying me out at night from that airport, and then I would come back home. And then I started going to Montauk at age 3 and kind of developed a resonance and an eventual Stockholm-like acceptance of being there up into my teen years. And I called myself Gene 7 there because they did many experimentations with the 7th gene for me. They called original children there, original 80s kids, like numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it was of course original 11. And I was there after Project Phoenix 1 and 2, that original group of 80s kids. And they also called us primes, or galactic primes, because we survived all their tests and trials, and we were there the longest. It's like they kept us there the longest. But the thing is that Montauk didn't only just stay right at Long Island, even though they had frequency grids and other things to keep you there. It stemmed out into other areas, like Minnesota had a Montauk little mini project in other areas of the country. So then we would be switched out. We did rapid clone learning there. They actually had a clone house there where they made separate other bodies of us. And then they would get into a limo and be taken back into our life, and we would have to stay there. So I knew, with these memories, that I was definitely sold into those secret projects, probably since a baby. They did a lot of electrogravitic experimentations with us there at the towers. And they actually videotaped some of the kids walking off of that tower because they developed a type of plasma like buoyancy there. And it was like a blue thin film that you could feel on your skin, and you could almost bounce off the ground there because it was such saturation with constant inundation of frequencies and whatnot. And the ones who survived there, I say they became an extension of the Montauk Tower and its phantom pulses. Because of this, it's like they absorbed so much of it. They couldn't shut down the energy that was on there, and it's in a lot of the books too. And there's still phantom pulses going on because they couldn't control the energy at the end. And they can track the signals and relay in various Montauk projects around the world still with the pulses. And Looking Glass was the same. The kids who survived all that became an extension of Looking Glass. So they actually were codenamed Looking Glass themselves as people. What they had there was like pre-CERN computers that they took all the research, and that all got branched off into Hydra, which is a spin-off project from Plum Island. Plum Island had a Resident Evil file. It was nothing but dead things on Plum Island. So a large portion of my time was also being raised in the Kansas City base as well, which is as big as Kansas City itself. And from there, I was given the name Mother Echo too. And I was primarily switched out from Wisconsin, Missouri, and Arkansas. And then all the files that I had in Montauk too. So me and Wendy, what we did is a lot of work with certain screen memories, pushing past those. So what a screen memory is that your spirit is telling you something more is here. And then your spirit will step forward and move past that screen to push through that event and just see it for what it really is and start seeing things for how they really are. One screen memory, I can give an example, is I was being drowned at a pond at a place called Carson Park in Wisconsin. And a cop, and my grandfather, after I get off the airplane, would drown me in this pond and videotape it. And the weird thing is that they have some type of brain interface technology going on, because when they would do that to me or certain things, it would be broadcast and shared as a viewed experience to the other kids. And it's like they would be feeling the same things that I was feeling. And it's